first things first, I want to give a shout out to the iOS Tux video that I'm going to link in Twitch chat right now, and I'm going to have in the description of the video when I put this on YouTube. This video is really the best out there that I have found when it comes to actually in-game video settings, audio settings, sound settings, window settings, all of those things. This is the video that you guys need to be watching when it comes to this. This video will be specifically about hero settings, which he does touch on in the video, but doesn't go as in detail as I'm going to go. I'm going to go a lot more in detail on the specific hero settings. And we'll go on that later. So check that video out for sound settings, video settings, min-max your frame per second, better quality of life. You need to check those things out. Let's actually get to the actual in-game hero settings though. He talks about sensitivity in that video. I'm going to touch on it as well. First things first is you need to know that sensitivity multiplied by your mouse's DPI, which you can check in your own mouse settings, is the way you calculate your EDPI. Eggs, donkey, PP, igloo, okay, EDPI. That is sensitivity times your DPI is your EDPI, and most players will find a number between 3,000 and 8,000, probably be a good range for most people. Generally, 4,000 is the general ballpark for most players playing most heroes when it comes to aim-dependent heroes. Tank heroes can sometimes have higher sensitivities. Very mobile heroes like Genji players, Tracer players sometimes have slightly higher sensitivities as well. Flex support players like myself are generally on the lower end. Like I believe, what is my EDPI? It is like 2,800, so it's a little bit below 3,000. So that is the number one thing you need to be checking out. Crosshair is totally user preference based. However, I will recommend smaller crosshairs. Different colors have different benefits. Usually green is one that is usually most visible in most maps. However, you don't want a big crosshair because it should be to help you align your focus without distracting you or blurring your vision. That's the number two thing we're going to talk about. Next setting that everyone needs to kind of be aware of is in your gameplay. Let's actually get into your movement here. Controls general. Okay, here we go. Crouch is dependent on the person, but it needs to be easily accessible, and not only accessible, but it needs to be spammable. I have mine on C because I do not need to crouch and jump at the same time. So what I did is I used to have a lot of issues with spamming jump. A lot of new players do. Jump, jump, jump. That's bad habit to get into for movement related. So what I would do is I replaced it with C on my keyboard, which meant that instead of jump spamming, I just got in the habit of crouch spamming. And I'm not as good at it as I used to be back in the day, but it is extremely good habit to do so. And the other reason why I like it is because it allows me to freely use my pinky for shift. And it doesn't mean I have to stretch my fingers down to crouch. I can keep my WASD, pinky for my shift, thumb for my crouch. That's what I like best. I know Alt is also one that people can use. I don't have it on Alt, but you can do that as well. There's different preferences for that, but that you need to keep your crouch accessible. It needs to be accessible and spammable, okay? The other one is ping. So ping is the thing that you're gonna utilize to tell people where they are and what they are. So that's a training bot, guys. You can see it through the wall. You can do it on anything, right? Guys, watch out over there. There's something over there. Be careful of that. But there's different ping commands. Let's go here, right? You guys, I encourage you to look through the list of ping commands to find which ones stand out to you, but certainly notifying enemy ping commands needs to be very accessible and very spammable. Maybe not as spammable as crouch, but if your ping button is hard to use or not very comfortable, you need to prioritize that as quickly as you possibly can, because that is something that every player in Overwatch 2 could be using more. Very important ability to use. One other one that is, make sure that you just have, I think everybody should know this by now, but interact. Where is interact here? I don't remember the full list of things that interact with interact, but Symmetra TP, you need it to take Symmetra TP, so make sure that you have that bound to something accessible. It doesn't have to be spammable at all like crouch or ping need to be, but it is something that you need to know where it's at, okay? So this is good here. Quick melee as well, it needs to be accessible as well. I like it on the side of my mouse. I have 1 or 2 buttons on the side of my mouse. I like it there, but that's more personal preference as well, okay? Everything else relatively default, I think, for the most part. I'm not going to, by the way, break down every setting, but mostly big hero settings that I need to talk about. Now, Last couple of things I'm going to talk about that are good to have as well are easy access to the group up command. So that gives a notification to your teammates where you are. Even if it doesn't necessarily mean group up, it's like, hi guys, I'm here. Look at me, look at me, look at me. Group up, that's a good command to have. The second one that might be even more important than group up is I need healing. That is X for me. That needs to be very accessible. Guys, here, I need healing, I need healing, I need healing, I need healing, I need healing. Very important to have that one. And the other one that is not as useful, but can be useful, is having an easily accessible ultimate status. It doesn't have to be spammable. For example, mine is the alt command, and then I just bring my mouse down. So that's easy enough for me. So I just do this right here. But it's also good communicating with your teammates about your ultimate status as well. So those are the three biggest ones for me. But by far the most important one is then I need healing and group up. Okay, so those are two ones to have relatively keybound to other things. Now this is where we're going to be getting really, really, really interesting here. Okay. First thing is ability sensitivity. We're going to be talking about this one more in detail for each hero, but the ability sensitivity, to make things simple, is essentially how close you need to bring your crosshair to either an enemy or a friendly teammate for the ability to work. Look at Guardian Angel sensitivity. It's 100%. So if I bring my crosshair on friendly bot, even look how far my crosshair is away from friendly bot, but I can still Guardian Angel them. You saw how far away that was from him? Now, if I change that sensitivity to the opposite extreme with the sensitivity, if I crank my Mercy sensitivity with Guardian Angel all the way down, ready? Zoom. This means that look how close my crosshair has to be to the target for it to work. I have to be literally on top of the target for the Guardian Angel to go off. So what this means is if you're struggling with accuracy with your abilities, whether it's Zarya bubble, hack, Mercy, you're going to need this setting to be low. But keep in mind that it does mean that it's going to force you to be accurate for the ability to even go off. So for me, I might set my beam, actually 100 might not be best for Mercy. I might set my, we'll do it later, okay? But what you're going to need to know is that sensitivities will depend on the hero you're playing. Some sensitivities you want high, some sensitivities you want low, some sensitivities depend on the preference, okay? Next, the thing that we need to talk about are toggles, okay? Toggle essentially means that you can hold the ability for it to work for its full duration, or you have to tap it and it automatically goes for its full duration until you tap it again. In other words, the difference between toggle or not toggle is I have to hold the button to push the tissue paper away, and it's going to keep doing it until I release, or I'm going to tap it and it's just going to go automatically until I tap it again. The reason why toggles, at least on PC, I don't know how it is in console, but I would recommend for PC to always be off, is because yes, it requires a little bit more musculature work, like more work, but it allows quicker response time. If I turn toggle Guardian Angel on, I Guardian Angel and I just press the button, it does it for me. Great job, I love it, love automation. But the problem is if I want to stop my target Guardian Angel, I have to press it again. And even if that button press is super fast, it does slow you down. It's not as fast as simply releasing. It's an extra half of an action, which is going to slow you down. So turn it off. I'm going to go through the list here, but I don't think there's a single hero that you want toggle anything on. It's uncomfortable sometimes, but you need to learn to deal without it. You think there's one specific that need help? Yeah, I have heard that things like super jumping back in the day were better with toggle Guardian Angel. I don't remember. There's a couple of that. Like here's the deal, guys. I am not a one trick that's played 1,000 hours on every single hero, so there are going to be some teeny detail exceptions that I might get wrong. But overall, these are going to be the proper settings. Okay. So let's actually get into this here. Okay. I almost forgot. Two other things that we have to talk about. Okay. Scope sensitivity on Ashe and Ana, 37.89. From my information that I have is the accurate way for Ana, 37.89. I think that's the same with Widowmaker because it's fully scoped in. This is the 1-to-1 ratio for when you're not scoped. 37.89 for Widowmaker and Ana. And then for Ashe, I believe it's less so. It's bigger because you're not zoomed in as much. So 51.47. Now, you're going to have to take my word on this one. There's a lot of science and information behind this one that I studied years ago. My information is up to date. I do know that there is some variance of what people use for this here. There's logic for it. I don't think there is a scope sensitivity that works for every hero perfectly on big flicks, but from what I know, this is what not only most people recommend, but a lot of pros use this setting as well. So it's good enough. Trust me, it's good enough. The other setting that we talked about in detail on is recoil, recovery, aim compensation. Ugh, that's a mouthful. Let's go and demonstrate it right now. Recoil, recovery, aim compensation is when, I don't know what I'm doing here, I'm an idiot, is when you have an automatic readjustment of your crosshair every time you hit a shot. So for here, look at my crosshair. I shoot, it goes up, it goes back down to head level. Up, back down to head level. I'm not even moving my mouse. It's automatic kickback, and it goes right back. Now, what this setting does is if I go shoot and kick back, but I move my mouse down so I shoot and then move my mouse down, you're gonna notice that it doesn't sway. So in other words, I'm gonna go boing, 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 but I'm gonna pull my mouse down and it's just tight. It doesn't additionally sway the additional amount, right? So watch, I'm going to, you see the sway? It's still up, but it doesn't go down. I'm moving it down so it turns off the sway. You see that? I was a little slow there. So fire down, bang. You see there's no additional sway down. Now, that essentially gives you control of your crosshair faster when you're aiming down. Even a teeny bit down, it gives you control of your crosshair faster without having that additional delayed sway. Now, it does mean that it's not technically perfectly accurate, because if your muscle memory is used to the sway, then you're going to anticipate it and it's going to mess up your aim. For example, when I turn this off, you watch for the sway. You see that? Oh, it's the reload animation. You see, I flick down, but it still goes down further because it's not. You see that? You see that? I'm aiming, clicking, then down, and it keeps going. You see that? That can mess with people's aim. So here's what I've learned about recoil, recovery, aim compensation. You ready for this one? Drum roll. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. I have heard people that dogmatically say that you should turn it off. I have heard people dogmatically say that you should turn it on. I have people say that it doesn't matter, it's not a big deal. I do know, and I've talked with several Overwatch League hitscan DPS players that do not. I've talked with Overwatch League hitscan players that didn't even know the setting existed and have it on default. So here's what the takeaway is. There is a chance that turning it off is the best thing to do for most heroes. However, I do not have any hard facts that is the case for most Overwatch League players, and it's certainly not going to stop you from being an Overwatch League level hitscan. It is at best a micro detail, and regardless of which way you go with it, your body will get used to it and you'll be able to learn how to aim regardless of whether you have it off or on. The one exception to that rule that I have learned from Landon, who is a Baptiste, essentially one trick for ages, is that he says that with Baptiste, it's really good to have it off because you're firing so frequently that you end up running out of mouse pads. So let me demonstrate that. So I have recoil on. So I have the setting on with Baptiste right now, which isn't great. Okay, so let's show why that might not be great to have. You ready for this? I'm going to aim at select the right hero, and I'm going to aim at head height. You see this? So I'm constantly pulling. So you see how my aim kicks up? For me to fight that for the triple burst, you see how my bullets might miss because I'm shooting? You see it shoots up, shoots up. So what I have to do is to counter that with BAP is I have to pull down just a little bit. Every time I shoot with BAP, I'm pulling down on my mouse pad a little bit. I want you guys to watch this really fast. I'm pulling down. Let me actually get this set up really quick here. I'm pulling down, okay? Every time I shoot, I'm pulling down. So ignore all the notes here. Okay, ready? Ready? Put it back up. Pulling down every shot to fight that recoil. Reload. Pulling down, pulling down, pulling down to keep all three shots aligned to prevent the kickback from pulling down, pulling down, pulling down, pulling down, pulling down, pulling down. And eventually, you see how I'm running on a mouse pad? That's what you're trying to fight here. When you turn that off, When I pull, I don't have to pull down. I pull down and it resets. I pull up, I reset. 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 So actually, without getting too complicated with it, chat, you run out of mouse pad less because I actually have to fight that by aiming back up. It's going to take some getting used to, but you're going to run out of mouse pad less essentially by having it off on BAP particularly. Other heroes, it doesn't matter as much because you don't have that triple fire rate that you have to pull down on. But for BAP, it's good to have it off. So turn it off on BAP. The other heroes, it really doesn't matter that much. It really doesn't matter that much from what I know. Okay. I dropped my notebook. So all the crappy, uncomfortable, weird settings that we've kind of hit on at once, I think that's mostly it. Let's get started. Diva settings. Here we go. Diva. Toggle defense matrix off. Toggle off. Toggle off. You want better control. You do not want to have to press it again to cancel it off. Hold boosters. This falls into the toggle variety for me. You do not toggle your boosters. You hold. Instant release whenever you need to. That is an have it on. Hold boosters on. Toggle defense matrix off. Doomfist, no relevant settings. Junkerqueen, no relevant settings. Orisa, no relevant settings. Reinhardt, no seriously relevant settings. Again, toggle off. Movement relative to camera during barrier free lock. I found mixed signals on that one, but nothing doesn't seem to be particularly, you can leave it on. There's nothing super important with that one that I know. Maybe some tiny micro, nothing super impactful. Roadhog, nothing impactful. Sigma, toggle barrier off. Reload recalls barrier off. You do not want these settings active. Okay, moving on. Winston, primary fire, cancel secondary fire. You want this off. The reason why you want this off is because you do not want to rely on what if you mess up your release and you accidentally primary fire. That will cancel all the charge that you've generated from your secondary fire. So you want that off. Now, one little tip that somebody gave me in a direct message, which I don't like, I don't use, but I think it's worth mentioning, is that you can go into your Winston Crosshair, your reticle, and you can select show accuracy on. And what this does, watch the center of my crosshair. Do you see how ugly this thing looks? You see that? When that fully goes up, it's fully charged. Do you see that? So what that can do is to give you a visual cue for when your right click is fully charged. Similar to how Hanzo's show accuracy stats work as well. I don't like it. I don't necessarily need it. The audio cue is good enough for me, but it's worth noting maybe when you're getting early on with Winston for you to kind of have a visual cue for when your thing is fully charged. Okay. Moving on. Let's move on to Wrecking Ball. Toggle grapple claw off. Okay. Zarya. This is where we start to have some issues with Zarya. So let's actually swap to Zarya. I actually probably need to change my settings with this one, actually. So this is where we talk about sensitivity, right? Where, like, how important is it for you to be accurate with your bubbles versus timing with your bubbles? So for me, boy, like, I don't need to be that accurate with my bubbles. See how far my crosshair can be from the target and I can still bubble it? But the problem is when I have this. I might just, oh no, I didn't mean to bubble that guy. I meant to bubble this guy, right? So for most people, I would imagine having this high, but maybe not super high, so you can still benefit from a little bit of accuracy would be helpful. That would be my gut reaction, is you don't want it low. That requires you to be 100% perfectly accurate with your bubbles, but just to help make sure that you don't accidentally bubble the wrong person, and might be good to have your sensitivity a little bit lower. Okay, good to know that one. One of the few sensitivities where there's a little bit of judgment. Ashe, we already talked about the relative aim sensitivity earlier on. Recoil recovery aim compensation doesn't matter. I prefer it on, but it depends on you. Toggle zoom 100% off, 100%. Bastion doesn't matter. Cassidy recovery, recoil recovery aim compensation on. We talked about that already. On or off, it depends on the person. This is where we get a little bit of the nuance here. Now, I do not like target confirmation on duplicate. The nature of things like echo copy requires speed. If you cannot select the target you want to select, then it makes no sense for me to have confirmation. That additional button press is not something that I like doing. So I have it off, but I can see why people might have it on. I'm not going to be dogmatic about that. Duplicate sensitivity, I'm also going to turn down just a little bit for the same reason of the Zarya, where I don't want to end up targeting the wrong person. The sensitivity of that is like, how close does my crosshair have to be to the target to copy it? If it means that I have to be directly on top of the target, that probably requires too much accuracy for the speed required in a copy. However, if it's 100%, there's a much higher chance that you're gonna end up copying the wrong person. I know I can copy Tracer, but so for example, if I turn my see my copies at 9, this is reasonably close. But if it's at 100, it's just a little bit too wide for me. Now, if it's at 0, that's what you wouldn't want because, or 10, because look at how close my crosshair has to get to be able to copy. So I would recommend not 10. Probably not 100, depending on the situation. Probably something like 80, 90, 70, something like that, where you need to aim to the target, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Then one of the controversial settings that we brought up was her Echo Hold for Flight. I like Hold for Flight because I enjoy forcing... I like having the ability to kind of control my flight without having to, like, being able to instantly release it when I want it to cancel, right? So like, boom, instantly release it, I get immediately put it on a cooldown, I get the benefit from it, right? I don't have to hit it again to cancel it. But then the problem with that is you might want to crouch while you're flying, which is a lot of button presses because I'm having to hold with shift and then hold the crouch at the same time with my thumb, so it's kind of like a, you know, kind of a claw. So let's say I wanted to drop here, I could hold C. Kind of a neat situation. I prefer hold flight on, but if you're finding yourself having to move up and down a lot while maintaining in flight, it might be better to have that one off if you don't mind hitting shift again. But that one, it depends. Automatically climb walls, please have that on, or excuse me, off. Off with Hanzo. Junkrat, Riptide automatically climbs walls, off. Hold your space bar to climb walls, remember. It may depends on console, I'm sure. May, nothing. Pharah, nothing. Reaper, nothing. Sojourn, this is the big one with Sojourn. I know some people were swapping M1 and M2 because it felt more natural to aim their burst right click hit scan with M1. That is totally up to you guys. I can tell you right now that is not even a necessarily encouraged setting change. It is completely personal preference. Most Overwatch, I don't know a single Overwatch League player that has those switched. Doesn't mean you can't do it. Doesn't even necessarily mean that it's good or bad to do it. It just means that there's no necessarily huge advantage for it. Yeah, it's a cool little hip thing that a lot of people are bringing up, but it's not going to necessarily change your world unless that's just what you want to do. Soldier 76, yeah, I must have skipped Soldier, my bad. Hold to sprint needs to be on. It's much faster to stop sprinting than to tap it again, and being able to do that is incredibly important. Sombra, hack sensitivity. So this is very similar to the other things. I probably need to change mine from 100. I don't think 100 is where I want mine at. Something closer to 90 is probably closer to what I want, because again, I want to make sure that I'm hacking the right target. I need to hack, but I also need to hack accurately. So in other words, if I'm here, there's a real risk that I could hack the wrong target here. Oh no, I wanted to hack this guy, right? So what I want to do is I probably want to change my sensitivity to like 80 or 80, let's just say 85. I'm just gonna complete ballpark here, guys. You're gonna have to experiment with this on your own, to where I do need to aim on the target, but there is a little bit of leeway still in case I miss, but there's less of a chance of me hacking the wrong target, right? I can still hack relatively quickly, but I don't have to be right on the target. Symmetra, no. Torbjorn, no. Tracer, okay, this one is another really interesting one, and again, very preferential based. I know a lot of people both in and out of Overwatch League that use right click for blink and use shift for blink. In theory, I feel like shift for blink should be better so that you can use your right hand to aim, right? You can just aim with your right hand. You don't have to worry about blinking and aiming with your right hand. However, I do know of a couple of Overwatch League players that play Tracer that use right click for blink. So I think it's probably better to use shift, but I don't think it's actually that huge of a deal. I know a lot of Overwatch League players that have also have their ultimate on shift instead. I know some Overwatch League players that actually have right click as pulse bomb. So I think Tracer is one of those heroes that you're going to need to experiment heavily with, and try and look up a lot of research on videos and what the pro is doing, and then find out what works better for you. So because the hero is so fast, and so it's gonna you're gonna need to be comfortable with the hero, which means a lot of reps first off, but it also means you're gonna need to toy with which settings feel most comfortable for you. Worth noting. Okay, let's keep going. Widowmaker, we talked about this already. Toggle zoom off. Relative aim scope sensitivity, we talked about this. Recoil, recovery, aim compensation depends. But this is the big one. Grappling hook sensitivity needs to be low. This is the biggest setting that I see screwed up from all sorts of people, even pros forget to change the setting. If I have my sensitivity on 25, it means my grapple is relatively accurate. If I want to grapple for this wall edge, I don't have to aim directly on the wall. I can aim like here, and I'll still hit the wall. That's not bad. The problem becomes when this is like 100. Then you get really, really, really wacky issues. I mean, who's played Widowmaker for any time at all knows exactly what I'm talking about. Let's say I want to grapple across the opposite wall. Wait, what? No, I want it to grapple here, right? Please do not have the setting on 100. Please do not have the setting on 100. Please do not have the setting on 100. It is important that your grapple can go up quickly, so having it on 10, it probably isn't great. But you need to have this on the much, much, much lower end of the spectrum, because there's really no reason for you. If again, this is a perfect example right here. If I want to grapple up or do I want to grapple across? If I grapple here, this will not put me across, it will put me on the wall. See? That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted. Very important that you guys get that setting correctly. Okay. Keep going. Making sure I'm not forgetting anything here. I have all my notes here. Okay, this is where we get to the juice, because the support settings are often pretty tricky. Toggle zoom off. Recoil, recovery, aim compensation depends. Relatively aim sensitivity while scope 37.89. Nano boost requires target confirmation. I do not like this setting. I don't like it. I know some pros do use it. Most pros don't. I don't like it. I don't like the additional step that I have to do to nano boost. I just prefer to be accurate with my nano boost to begin with. Yes, you're going to have a goofed up nano every now and then, but in general, the speed is very important for me to have with this hero. So I like it off, but I can understand why people have it on. I'm not going to be dogmatic about it. Now, what you can do to fix this is change the setting again. This is probably a setting that I should have had differently as well, where you have the nano boost sensitivity to a point to where you need to be accurate, but not perfectly accurate. It again will probably make it so that there's fewer times where you nano the wrong person. Whoops, I missed my note. So like for right here, do you see this? Do you see the scope here? Do you see the scope? I need to be accurate, but if it's too high, even just a little bit higher, there's a much higher chance of me aiming this direction, but I didn't quite get it enough to get on the right target. The problem with too low, of course, as we talked, is that I have to aim directly on top of the target, which I might not be able to get it in time. Like, what if I go like, oh, nano boost, nano boost, nano boost, right? That requires a little bit too much accuracy in the heat of battle, right? So I would recommend getting the setting high, but not too high. But you can nano around walls for dive. That is true. That is true. But those niche situations that's more of a niche situation. I am Spiloing today, yes. Okay, let's keep going. We're almost done. Baptiste, we talked about this already. Automatic or recoil, recovery, aim compensation, I like off on this particular hero. I think it needs to be off, although it will take getting used to. Okay, and then automatic reload off. The reason why this is, I don't know how many of you guys watched the ML7 video back in the day, but basically the idea is that if the recoil, with the automatic reload on, it forces you to reload sometimes in situations where you want to shoot. So let's say I'm healing. Blah, 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 blah. I'm just spamming heal. And I really want to finish off this target right here. Shoot. With it off, see, I don't have to reload my healing. See that? I can keep, and then I only reload when I want to. And it goes vice versa too. Let's say you run out of bullets. Right? I'm just spamming. I don't want to reload. I want to heal. Because oh, this guy's going to die if I don't heal. With the problem with it having it on is as soon as you hit 0 on either your healing or your damage, it automatically reloads for you, which I don't love. It's not really a big bad setting, but it's probably min-maxing. It's probably better to have it off. Okay. Brig, we talked about this one a little bit last week. Toggle barrier off, repair pack sensitivity. Probably can have this one a little bit more accurate, but again, doesn't need to be perfectly accurate, especially in Overwatch 2. There's less clutter on your screen. One thing that we did with Brig that I had to, it's gonna take me some getting used to. I've just been a bad boy. I've not fixed this setting until recently, actually. Is taking your shield dash, taking your mouse 1, and that's your melee. This is not my mouse 1. So then for me to bash, look at the bottom right of my screen. You see this? See this equal sign? this is my melee thing. So if I want to bash, I actually have to melee, not swing. So what I would recommend is toying with your settings, with your melee and with your mouse one, so that you're not actually, while you're shield dancing, right? You don't accidentally shield bash, right? You don't want to do that. You want to actively, purposely choose when you shield bash, which means you need to re-keybind your M1, your normal damage, to melee, and then change your melee to M1. You guys kind of understand? You flip-flop your melee and M1, and that makes it so that you have to actually consciously bash for it to work. Little tidbit, definitely helps a little bit. Okay, last few. Kiriko, allied health bars, all that stuff is fine. Swift step sensitivity, I think it's good to have it 100% because this is an ability that you want to use very quickly. Yeah, the blue outline doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be healing. However, if you're having issues with landing your healing, it's totally fine to have this up higher. If you're more accurate and you're tired of healing the wrong person, setting this slightly lower so you have to at least heal relatively close to them. See the gap there? Then micromillimeter, and there it is, right? So you need to be basically healing Ofuda sensitivity is how close your crosshair needs to be to the target for it to accept healing. That's okay to have a little bit lower. The swift step sensitivity you probably want to have closer to high because it is used as an emergency cooldown. Now, I will say that having this at 100% has cost some people their lives. I've seen even Overwatch League games decide because this was too high. However, the speed is more important than the accuracy, usually. Okay? Toggle healing Ofuda, please have that off. So you can obviously, like, it just basically means that I click once, that's only 1 heal, 2 heal, 3 heal. You should get in the habit of, like, you heal as much as you want so you don't get locked in the animation. Like, let's say you want to, like, quickly damage. I don't even have to do all my healing, right? Generally, you want to do a full healing and then... That's kind of what you want to do, right? It slows you down very slightly, from what I know, but it's not enough to be super, super impactful. Now, the interesting one with Kiriko, obviously, is the healing Ofuda UI. I kind of like having that on, but it's actually, if it's just visual clutter and you're mashing your healing anyway, it's really not that big deal to turn it off. Because it's like, if you're only holding down right-click and finishing every single clip every single time, then yeah, it doesn't really provide a lot to it. So, yeah, it doesn't really matter that much. But yeah, this is 100% is usually good. This slightly lower is usually good. This needs to generally be off. This generally can be on, but it can also be off. The other thing with Kiriko, obviously we talked about, is swapping your M1 and M2. M2 to heal, M1 for the accurate shot. I like this one better because it reminds me of BAP more. I know it's ironic for me to say, like, oh, don't do the swap on Sojourn, but for me, it's like, I don't mind healing with my M2. This one feels okay to me, right? You want to avoid doing this, right? Everybody does that at the start, but yeah, you want to break that habit. Okay, Lucio, this was another tricky one for me, but I managed to give you guys some good. Hold to crossfade, please have that off. I do know that it affects your wall riding slightly. It was only relatively useful when you would get stunned and it would automatically swap you to heal stance, but not as useful. There's not as many stuns, and also it does affect your wall riding, I believe, a little bit. Backwards wall ride needs to be on, please. That very, very important setting, allows you to backwards wall ride, right? It's good. Okay, wall jump on release. Now, this one can be on or off depending on what you prefer. I think most pro Lucios prefer it off because it gives them a little bit of control, but I do believe it makes your wall riding a little bit harder, and I have heard that it is hard to do on console. So take that as you will. Hey Baggins, good to see you.
Just lurking.
Jake said that weaving doesn't have much benefit. Jake's VOD was definitely focused more on the healing side of things, so I think weaving is still important, yes. But in that particular VOD, it wasn't as impactful. Okay, Mercy. This is the big juicy one, okay? Let's talk about Mercy, okay? Min-maxing here. Okay, Mercy settings, 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 Mercy settings. Okay, Mercy settings. Toggle beam connection off. Toggle guardian angel off. Work that pinky. Work it. Work it. Work it. Work it. Work it. Work that M1. Work it. Work it. Work it. Please have. You need the immediacy in response from having toggle off. The two settings that are worth talking about: beam sensitivity. Again, beam sensitivity is pretty obvious. It's like, which do I beam, which do I guardian angel? Having this one relatively lower than 100 does help with beam accuracy. You shouldn't have a hard time aiming your beam at somebody. So this one should be a little bit lower to prevent you from healing or damage boosting the wrong person. There are full videos on Mercy settings, so if you guys really want some in-depths, this is just a quick run over. The other thing here is going to be your Guardian Angel target priority, prefer facing target. Very important that you do this one because this allows you to be healing one target, and if you're looking at no targets, you can Guardian Angel back to the target you're beaming without even looking at them. Look at this, see this? But if I want to fly to somebody else, I can by simply aiming my crosshair. You see that? Very important that I can do that. You need to have this setting. It is unquestionable the best Mercy setting to have out of all of them. You must have this setting involved because it allows you to even heal the target as you're running away from whatever's threatening you. Very important setting to have. Okay? Okay. Moira, nothing to mention. Zenyatta, this is the last quote-unquote hot take. The sensitivities of the discords and harmonies are going to depend on your personal preference. I find that I don't necessarily need my sensitivity to be very low because usually the way I'm playing Zen is everything's spread out, so I can be relatively accurate in my orbs. I don't really... There's usually not clumped up enemies or friendlies that cause me to orb the wrong person. So this being close to 100 is fine. Now, what is hot is that a lot of people do like Discord on the scroll wheel. I don't see any benefit from it. It's the same reason why I think like optimally you'd want your blinks with shift oftentimes with Tracer. It's like I like having my right hand aim and not have to worry about Discord as well, because for me to aim, like I have to move one of my fingers to also use the scroll wheel. I don't like that. I do not like that. I clickety clickety click. Discord is instantaneous anyway. I can just mash it. I just don't see the benefit from it. And also, I don't know. I do know that there's people that have benefits from it, but I've never found the use for it. And I also don't. I know that most Overwatch League pros don't ever. I don't know the full settings of most Overwatch League players, but I do know the ones that I've worked with do not have this setting involved, so it might be a tiny little min-maxing thing, but it's really not that impactful, and it's more personal preference than anything.